living. Yeah, she's on a mission, keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen. And Tammy Mac, oh, what show is that? It's the Tammy Mac Show on Fox. So, Tammy Mac, yeah, ooh, that.
Dr. Rashawn, I want to talk to you about, I had this thought. What if reparations were given to Black people in 1865?
Look, I mean, if that had happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation for the most part. What people have to realize is that historically, Reconstruction failed. See, after the Civil War in 1865, after Juneteenth occurred, and of course, there's one important thing to note is that, of course, celebrating Juneteenth makes sense. It's the 11th federal holiday, but it is symbolic. It does not come along with any sort of material resources that address the bodily, financial, and emotional toll that slavery took. And what we have to note is that in 1865, there was something called the General Order Number 15 that came down from General Sherman. This was the 40 acres and a mule that we just heard about. That 40 acres and a mule was supposed to be given to Black people who had been enslaved. But instead, what quickly happened is that as the Union Army and as the United States tried to heal the nation, they bargained with the Confederacy, with Southern states, pulled out of the South, and instantly we had Jim Crow segregation, redlining, convict leasing, which was slavery by another name, in the state of Alabama. To tell people how long this continued, in the state of Alabama, convict leasing, which is where Black people got locked up for jaywalking or chewing gum in the street or looking at white people or trying to bargain for a barrel of hay,
or
put on the chain gang.
Arrested for popping a wheelie in the middle of the street. Yeah, let's bring it to 2020, you know.
Exactly. I mean, very frivolous things that have no bearings that locks us up. 75% of the state of Alabama's income and financial resources came from convict leasing. So we wouldn't necessarily be having this conversation that happened. And then we got to think that not only that, slave owners got their land returned, and some of them, like in the DC area, even got reparations for lost wages, those lost wages being slaves. So see, part of when we talk about reparations and the way that we are describing what the United Nations has laid out, part of repairing, part of rehabilitation is a truth and reconciliation process to educate not only America, but also Black people about a history that has been robbed from us, not just our legacy coming from the continent of Africa, but even in the United States, not knowing the history of what has happened to our people. And that is the reason why when we talk about reparations, yes, cash payments, these wealth building opportunities, how we think about land is there. 25% of the United States is owned, 25% of land in the United States is owned by the federal government. It is federal land. We can lease that land. That land can be sold, because this is the thing. Cash is, of course, really important, but cash can start to lose its value, and we're starting to see that in the international market. We also need things that are going to accrue equity, right? And land is one of the only things. God isn't making any more of that unless the lands recede and we go to another planet. But we have to think about this in complex ways. And so what happened in 1865 is really important for people understanding that period from 1865 into the late 1970s was Reconstruction. There was more racial progress, more Black people owning businesses, more Black people owning homes, more Black people gaining political power. And it was taken from us the same way in this moment that we see voting rights being rolled back. We see states challenging the fact that kids are having discussions about racism in school. And I just want to quickly note this, that look, if Black kids are young enough to experience racism, white kids are young enough to learn about it. And I think this is the legacy and the sort of things that we have to think about reparations, truth, and reconciliation.
Yeah, absolutely. Our soulmates are chiming in.